what it feels like to be a freak.
Welcome to the Blue, Black, and Doors channel. Just wanted to tell you what this is fixing to happen. Is this little video, kind of the history on the Horseshoe Bend and all. The day before we rode down there, it just was too long to put in one video, so just some outtakes of the little short videos you watch at the Horseshoe Bends that tell you about the history. So enjoy, ride safe. We'll catch you later.
A young soldier from Tennessee cleans his musket. A Creek warrior from the town of Miyako finds an arrow pointing to a shaft made of cane. At the top of a nearby hill, the Creek prophet Manahi implores the Creator to endow his warriors with supernatural powers. On this night, men from both sides, those who will live and those who will die, pray for courage and wonder what terrors, what glories will come with the dawn. The war leader of the Red Stick Creeks gathered in the bend is known as Manawa, or the Great Warrior. He was once known as Hatlepoya, or the War Hunter, because of his legendary boldness, ferocity, and eagerness for battle. The leader of the opposing army is General Andrew Jackson, a man with an indomitable will and a violent temper. A backwoods lawyer with little formal military training, Jackson was elected Major General in the Tennessee militia due to his skills as a politician. He is a leader so tough, his men call him Old Hickory. His enemies call him Old Mad Jackson, and will soon call him Sharp Knife. Perhaps Manawa listens to Manahi and wonders if the prophet's magic is more powerful than the bayonets and bullets of Jackson's soldiers. Manahi is a man of magic. Manawa is a man of war. Whether magic or war, the Red Stick warriors gathered in the bend are determined to make a stand. This is the site they have chosen. Here by the river, they will turn back the enemy or die. Perhaps Jackson ponders the coming battle and reflects on the long campaign beginning nearly 6 months ago in October of 1813. Now he is determined to bring the war to an end with this final battle and ensure that the mighty Creek nation will never again threaten the frontier nor stand in the way of American expansion. It is almost dawn. The two forces wait. In a few hours, on these few acres, the fate of two nations will change forever. And yet the coming battle is but the climax of a series of events reaching back 2 centuries. Both Jackson and Manawa are simply actors in an old drama that will now play out on this remote bend of the Tallapoosa River, where so many brave men will die. Also known as the Red Eagle, attacked and killed 250 Creek and American settlers sheltered at Fort Mims, a stockade just north of Mobile. The brutal attack on Fort Mims, labeled by American newspapers as a massacre of innocent men, women, and children, escalated the Creek Civil War into a larger conflict between the Red Sticks and the United States. The governors of Tennessee and Georgia joined the Mississippi Territory in calling out their militias and marching them into Creek territory. By October of 1813, Andrew Jackson had taken command of an army of Tennessee militia. He claimed he would avenge the blood of his countrymen and conquer what he called the most warlike tribe of barbarians in the universe. Jackson moved southward into Creek land, confident that his campaign would be quick and a rout of the Red Sticks certain. He soon found himself mistaken. Wounded prior to the Creek War in a Nashville gunfight, Jackson's arm continued to bother him, and the many weeks of campaigning in the wilderness kept him in poor health. Throughout the fall and winter, desertions, Supply problems, old wounds, and sickness plagued him. Writing home to his wife, he explained, "It is not fighting the Indians I find most troublesome. It is fighting the indifference and incompetence of those I command." Political and military rivalries, as well as an undisciplined army, played havoc with his attempts to strike at the Red Sticks. In 4 months of campaigning, Jackson only fought 2 successful battles against the Creeks. In January 1814, just a few miles from Horseshoe Bend at Initechapco Creek, Jackson barely escaped defeat and was forced to retreat and reorganize his army. 2 months later, in March, resupplied and reinforced by regular soldiers of the 39th United States Infantry, Jackson was ready for battle. He marched from Fort Williams on the Coosa River with a force of 3,300 men, including 500 Cherokees and 100 Lower Creek warriors allied to the United States. His objective was the village of Tohopeka, a Red Stick refuge and defensive position in the Horseshoe Bend of the Tallapoosa River. Before setting out on the 2-day march, Old Hickory stated, "Any officer or soldier who flies before the enemy without being compelled to do so by superior force and actual necessity shall suffer death." This threat clearly reflected his absolute determination to bring the war to a swift and certain close. On March 26, Jackson's army made camp 6 miles northwest of the bend in the Tallapoosa River known as the Horseshoe, or the Horse's Flat Foot. In this bend, Manawa waited with 1,000 Red Stick warriors and at least 350 women and children. Beginning in December of 1813, people from 6 Upper Creek towns, Nuyaka, Okfuski, Okchaya, Eufaula, Fish Pond, and Hillaby, gathered in the 100-acre bend of the Tallapoosa for protection. At the toe of the bend, they built a temporary village called Tohopeka, consisting of about 300 log houses. Across the narrow neck of the bend, they constructed a log and dirt barricade nearly 400 yards long. In this fortified place, the Red Sticks hoped to defeat an attacking army, or at least delay the attackers, while women, children, and finally warriors escaped downriver. At 6:30 in the morning of March 27, General John Coffee and his force of 700 mounted riflemen and 600 allied warriors broke camp. Coffee crossed the Tallapoosa about 2.5 miles downriver from the village of Tohopeka and took up positions directly across from the village and surrounding the bend. His assignment, to prevent any escape or reinforcement of the Red Sticks. The remainder of the army, about 2,000 men, marched directly for the neck of the Horseshoe. Their mission was to attack the barricade or breastwork, sealing off the narrow portion of the bend. Jackson knew that attacking the log and dirt barricade would be not only difficult, but also deadly due to its great strength. Writing after the battle, he described the barricade as a breastwork of greatest compactness and strength, from 5 to 8 feet high, and prepared with double portholes very artfully arranged. An army could not approach it without being exposed to a double and cross fire from an enemy who lay in perfect security behind it. Sounding the advance, and with bayonets fixed, the regulars swept forward. The first to scale the walls was Major Lemuel Montgomery of the 39th United States Infantry. He was also one of the first to fall, a bullet through the head. The fighting was fierce, and the carnage was dreadful. One participant of the battle later wrote, "Arrows, spears, and balls were flying. Swords and tomahawks were gleaming in the sun." The Red Sticks fought desperately, but they were outgunned as well as outnumbered. Many tried to escape by swimming the river, but Coffee's men shot them before reaching the opposite bank. Midway through the battle, Jackson offered the remaining warriors a chance to surrender, but they simply fought that much harder. Slowly, the Red Sticks were isolated, overpowered, and killed one by one. The battle ended. Darkness covered the bend. In the narrow confines of the Bend, over 800 Red Stick warriors died that day. 557 counted on the battlefield. 300 estimated shot in the river. The prophet Manahi was found among the dead, killed by grape shot fired from a cannon. Jackson's force lost 49 killed and 154 wounded. Many of these wounded died in the coming weeks. Some 350 women and children became prisoners of the Cherokee and Lower Creek warriors. Manawa escaped the slaughter. Suffering from 7 wounds, he lay among the dead until nightfall. Making his way to the river, he climbed into a canoe and disappeared into the darkness. The Battle of Horseshoe Bend brought to an end both the Creek War and the power of the Creek Nation. A few weeks after the battle, William Weatherford surrendered to Jackson in his camp near the ruins of Fort Toulouse, an old French fort built at the confluence of the Coosa and Tallapoosa rivers. Though not present at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, Weatherford was wanted for the brutal attack on Fort Mims. "I am in your power. Do with me as you please," Weatherford said. "If I had an army, I would yet fight and contend to the last. But I have none. My people are all gone. I can now do no more than weep over the misfortunes of my nation." Moved by his dignity, Jackson allowed Weatherford to leave free and in peace. On August 9, 1814, General Jackson and a gathering of Creek chiefs signed the Treaty of Fort Jackson. In signing, the Creek ceded nearly 23 million acres of land to the United States. A large portion of this land became the state of Alabama. Ironically, only one Red Stick chief signed the treaty. The other chiefs had been allied to the United States during the war. The victory at Horseshoe Bend opened new lands for thousands of American settlers. Rapidly, they built new homes, farms, and towns on what had so recently been Creek land. The victory also thrust Andrew Jackson into a position of national prominence. Jackson became a major general in the United States Army after Horseshoe Bend and turned his attention to defending the Gulf Coast against British invasion. On January 8, 1815, he won an astonishing victory against an experienced British army at the Battle of New Orleans. Defeating the British made Jackson a national hero. Largely as a result of the battles of Horseshoe Bend and New Orleans, Andrew Jackson was elected the 7th President of the United States in 1828. During his presidency, Jackson promoted and signed the Indian Removal Act, a law ordering the removal of all tribes from the Southeast. Manawa recovered from his wounds and remained an influential figure in Creek society. For many years, Manawa strongly opposed ceding tribal land to the United States, but in the end, he was among those banished from their ancestral home and forced to relocate to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. As he traveled west with his people toward a new and unknown future, he said to a companion, "Last evening, I saw the sun set for the last time, and its light shined upon the treetops, and the land, and the water, that I am never to look upon again. No other evening will come, bring to my eyes the rays of the setting sun upon the home I have left forever."